So needless to say, you're getting a lot of different things here at the Green Festival. And so the pivot from Willow to Jim Coulter, you only see that at the Bloomberg Green Festival. We're going to talk about money. And we're going to talk about the fact that this is a fascinating moment to be an investor in this space. And just to tee you up a little bit, Jim, we've known each other for almost 20 years. We got to know each other when you were full on in the private equity, sort of classic private equity business. You made a sharp pivot about 5 years ago to go all in on this business, on investing in climate. 1,400 companies. You guys have presence in 50 countries, I believe. I want to have a wide-ranging conversation. I know you have some things to share with us, but I want to start by asking you, like, what's the biggest surprise? This was a massive bet in a lot of ways. Maybe the biggest bet you've made in your career. What have you learned?
I've learned that approaching climate change, you have to think of it as two sides of a coin. For years, since Keeling in the 60s, we've been focused on the need side. We have a problem to solve. But the other side of the coin is actually the opportunity. We're about to undertake a $120 trillion reindustrialization of the world, and that need and that opportunity need to move together. The money can't come from governments. No coalition of NGOs can get it done. Unless we can get the money moving in a capitalist system, we can't solve the problem. So this idea of putting the need and the opportunity together has been more challenging than I expected.
All right, so one of your signature moves as an investor over the past 40 years has been every year you get together with your investors and you put together this presentation. You and I have talked about it in the context of the year ahead. Now, as you're totally focused on climate, you have a version that you've been playing around with and presenting. We have a version that we're going to share with you, and we're going to run through it, if we can bring it up on the screen. All right. So I get to pick and choose here. All right, Optimism, green shoots. Let's start there.
Just a little background on this. As well as creating an organization that invests, we actually have a very interesting seat in the middle of the climate ecosystem. We're meeting investors. Literally, I've met with 1,400 entrepreneurs around the world. We're operating $9 billion of climate companies. Those companies are forecasted to replace, against the counterfactual, about 160 million cars off the road for a year. So we're kind of in the mix. But not only are we generating investments, we're hopefully generating insights. So this is us stepping back from that process to watch.
So we're inside your brain right now. This is cool. Let's go.
So first of all, green shoots. And one of the things that I've been a tech investor, I've been a climate investor. Both of them are known for one thing, which is conferences. Like, there are more tech conferences, more climate conferences than I've ever seen. But they look and feel very different. Same hotels, same awful coffee, same bad Danish. But let me show you what a tech conference sounds like. Can we get...
But I'm genuinely optimistic about work in the metaverse. Whether as a hologram sitting next to you in a physical meeting or in a discussion taking place in the metaverse.
I think this technology is inevitable. I think this is the future of the internet. So I think over time you will see greater and greater acceptance.
We believe that AI will be about individual empowerment and agency at a scale that we've never seen before, and that will elevate humanity to a scale that we've never seen before either.
We'll be able to create a theory of the entire universe.
Tesla car next year will probably be 90%.
That's 2014.
Autopilot.
I'm extremely confident of achieving full autonomy and releasing it to the Tesla customer base next year.
Everything is possible. Everything is happening tomorrow, like a font of optimism. Yeah. If you go to a climate conference, it's different, and for good reason. We can go ahead on this, Bruno. I want to show you a word cloud from a recent climate conference I went to. Supply chain problems, inflation, NIMBYism, et cetera. Essentially, there's almost a paradox of pessimism, and that's well earned. But every once in a while, I find myself saying, I want to just channel my inner tech for a second and like, what could go right? And let me share just a few things that are out there. First of all, I think we have to assume discontinuities. If you look at most of the climate work that's done, it's over 30 years, essentially assuming, and this is, by the way, I'm sorry, if you go back one, please. if you go back to what SBTI just put out for the path to net zero, I want to read this to you, Jason, for a moment. So this is what business is supposed to do. The minimum forward-looking ambition of near-term targets consistent with reaching net zero by 2050 at the latest, assuming a linear absolute reduction, linear intensity reduction, and intensity convergence between the most recent year and not increasing absolute emissions or intensity.
I mean, that makes total sense to me, right?
Now, first of all, there's great science behind that. I admire it. But imagine trying to figure out the iPhone in 1982 based on a computing graph. One thing I know from 40 years in business is nothing is linear, and there will be surprises. In fact, we should assume that there's going to be discontinuity. More people died from infections than heart attacks before penicillin. You know, taxis were taxis before Uber. Trading was trading until indexing. So industries constantly go through disruptions. As I travel the climate world, I'm running into disruptions that are about to happen at any time. I can't yet tell you which will happen, but I would bet on the field. There are going to be discontinuities that break our way. Our goal is to position for them. The second thing I'd point out on the green shoot side is understand the power of cost curves. Think about cell phones. In about 2000, they hit a whole new level, and suddenly they were ubiquitous. It changed how video conferencing came out in 1964, but it was $5,300 an hour. When it's free, things work very differently. In the climate world, you are watching some of the most powerful industrial cost curves I've ever seen. 28% for solar, that is double a normal industry. And these cost curves, while they look linear, they hit points, like right about now when solar becomes dramatically cheaper, things happen. We can predict the cost curves. We can't predict how the market changes.
So then why that word cloud of pessimism?
Well, I think in some ways the voices that got us to this key moment have been calling out the need. And part of the reason I'm on the stage, I don't do many conferences, is we need to change our voices a little. We need to also make sure that we're looking for that opportunity. And we're looking for Colin Powell once said about leadership is that optimism is a force multiplier. We have to find a little bit of optimism. That is not to deny that this is tough. And the last thing on optimism is, you know, when things like this conference happen where you get many parts of society, policy members, activists working together, things happen.
Yeah.
Anyone remember the population bomb? 30 printings back in 1968. We were going to be out of food. Los Angeles, the smog was awful. I was in Beijing 3 weeks ago. The skies were clear. The ozone layer is actually going the other way now. Now, with time and with action, I think we can make progress. And that green shoots are something we need to grab a hold of.
All right, so I'm going to go counter then for my next for my next question, which is the whataboutisms.
Yeah, we also, as well as some optimism, we have to basically not fall for whataboutism.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the interesting things that's happened, if you look online and at social media, the attacks of climate deniers have flattened, but the attacks on climate solutions have gone up. And these are whataboutisms. Now, whataboutisms is a term that came from the 70s with the Irish Republican Army. Whenever they would do something, they'd say, what about the British soldiers? And Soviet propaganda uses whataboutisms. When Chernobyl hits, it's what about 3 Mile Island? And whataboutisms have hit now an absolute art form in today's politics. Let me just kind of show you what that sounds like.
What about those 21 Democrats?
What about beans that have more oil?
What about the Buddhists? What about the alt-left that came charging at the, as you say, the alt-right? What about us?
What about me? What about terrorism?
But what about Benghazi? What about the blatant lies that the Obama administration told us? What about the fact that Ben Rhodes bragged about lying to the media and the public about the Iran deal?
Whenever a pundit or a politician starts with what about, be prepared to be deflected and potentially deceived. So whatabouts are rampant in climate. Like, what about EVs?
Right.
Aren't they dirtier? Well, yes, when it leaves a factory, because you have the battery in it, it's slightly more emissions at manufacture. But once it gets on the road, an EV is 90% more efficient and uses 1/3 of the emissions over its lifetime. It's a ridiculous argument. Or what about solar panels in China? Yes, they take some of the power from a grid that is still dirty and they generate emissions. But if you look at the numbers, those emissions are replaced in 3 months of their 25-year life. Are we not supposed to use solar panels because we're trying to replace a grid that's dirty? We can never replace it if we don't start using them. It's a circular argument. Or one of my favorites is basically the pessimism and whataboutism with materials. Yes, we have a lot of work to do. We can find oil in the North Sea. We can't find lithium. Like if you look at what happened in lithium, we went from worried we'd never have enough lithium to a massive oversupply in 2 years. So my point here is, as we're going down this path, we have to make sure that we don't get caught in the whataboutisms. And I always say, like, what about doing the work?
Yeah.
What about solving the problem?
And so how do you institutionalize, or how do you sort of create, I mean, because part of this is perception, part of this is the dialogue, part of this, we saw a lot of cable news clips, and between cable news and social media, it picks up a lot of steam. So what can a group like this of the what about we do the work folks do?
It's exactly that. I think one of the things I've learned in climate, and to your earlier question of why I've gone deep, is you cannot be a tourist in climate. You can't just sort of pop in and think you know the answer. This is an immensely complicated revolution that we're going through. I don't think I have to tell this room because you're here, but we have to encourage people to do the work and not simply fall back on how things are done now.
Right.
Just as an aside here, you have to understand what we're doing is a simplification problem. I want you to think about our current energy system. You want to turn on a light. How does that work? Well, first of all, 50 million years ago, the sun shines. It's captured in a tree. The tree falls down. For 50 million years, it gets subsumed under thousands of feet. We then take an iron pipe. We put it down 10,000 feet. We turn it right. We put in water. We crack rock. We bring up a vapor. The vapor goes in 3 million miles of pipe. We wash it in a $250 million natural gas processing plant. We put it in 3 million miles of pipe again. We put it to $1 billion gas turbine. We basically blow it up, releasing a molecule that can destroy the world, and we have an electron. The other way to do that is we can get sun from this afternoon, hit a silicon panel. There's silicon everywhere, and we have an electron.
Yeah.
So it seems hard to do. I mean, this is hard to do, but what we're doing is hard.
Yeah.
So, why not make it a little more simple?
All right. So that takes me to the third one that I wanted to touch on with you, which is the policy box, because this is a room of doers, as you mentioned. It's not totally simple how we get this done, and it requires a bunch of different angles. So tell us about the policy side.
Yeah, I think we have had an enormous gift, and we picked up an enormous set of allies in the recent policy wave. And I'm often asked, are you nervous investing in areas that have subsidies? I'm nervous investing in food. I mean, there's 400 million of subsidies in
right.
European food. Healthcare, that's subsidized. And if you think about the IRA, it's about $76 billion a year. We are subsidizing fossil fuels around the world at close to $700 billion a year. So it's not just about subsidies, it's are they settled, and has it become part of the landscape in a way we can count on? And, it's staggering what's happened in the last 4 years. If you look at it, the U.S. in three bills, it's close to $600 billion. If you go to Europe, they've pledged $1.6 trillion. You can never really tell in Europe where the dollars are there, but it's been pledged. China, the only part of investment that grew in China last year is green sector of their economy. And, it's not just there. It's India, which is all in. Australia. Australia has a Green New Deal. And I could go on and on around the world. Kenya, Malaysia. The world has decided, much like healthcare, much like education, that this is an area that needs to be subsidized. But what's important is actually not the numbers, and this has been a light going off for me. It's the shape. So the original policy dilemma was a balance beam, affordability and sustainability. And as I showed you, the affordability is getting better. But what happened is we've now changed the shape of policy. With the Ukraine, suddenly Europe and around the world realized that they could not count on the current system for energy security. If you want energy security and you don't have oil and gas, you got to go green.
Right.
So suddenly, green had a new ally, which was security. And then a fourth ally picked up, because if you look at the IRA, probably the key part of it, and the reason Macron was so mad at us, was there was a industrial policy to it, a reindustrialization of the country. 270,000 jobs in the U.S., millions of jobs in China. They figured out in China that for every job that they lose in the fossil fuel industry, they pick up 4.5 in the green. So suddenly, this debate that many of us in the room have been rooting for, the environmentalists, the activists, got new allies, and those new allies are called energy security and jobs.
Right.
And those allies are showing up in weird places. One of the reasons that I'm maybe less worried about policy right now changing with an administration is the money has gone to the red states. The blue states voted for it. The money has gone to the red states. And so your new set of allies looks like this.
In the heart of Texas, green jobs are booming.
But increasingly, Wyoming's energy comes not from mining what's down below, but from mining the wind above.
Different kind of farm in Crittenden County is planting the seeds to grow jobs and produce green energy.
Texas is seeing a boom in renewable energy, and that means more companies are hiring.
The governors of Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana announced the hydrogen partnership this week.
But do you essentially now politicians are in a box? If we did away with the IRA, we do away with a lot of jobs. And are the politicians that have been cutting ribbons willing to shut the factories down?
And do you think we're headed for, I think it's fair to say, quite an election. Do you have confidence? Do you have real confidence that a new administration, a non-democratic administration, will continue to invest here?
As my partner Hank Paulson said, if some of the things happening in politics happen here, this is maybe number 10 on my list.
Yeah.
So I can't have confidence about a lot of things.
Right.
But what I can say is these allies of jobs make a difference.
Mm. And Texas is a fascinating example of that, because clearly not a lot better than that place. All right. We just have a couple minutes left. Let's talk about passing the baton briefly, because I feel like that's a nice sort of way to send this audience off, or send us off, I guess, and give them something to chew on.
Yeah, so one of the things I'm watching, this is important, it's an important moment, is a bit of a passing the baton of a race that we're all running together. And I think it's a very positive thing. We should celebrate it. In certain types of human endeavor, there tends to be a little bit of a relay race. This is an Olympic year or something, in relays. And it often starts with the scientists. Think about Niels Bohr, the ARPANET scientists, Mariko and Wiseman. Then it moves on to the prophets. The people tell us we need to pay attention. Einstein sends a note to FDR, says you got to think about this bond thing. Gates talks about pandemics. It then moves to the policymakers. And finally, it moves kind of to the people who then have to get it done, the people in this room and elsewhere that have to get it done.
I do love that young, handsome Al Gore up there.
How about that, huh? He invented the internet.
Quite a callback.
He didn't invent the internet, but he helped empower it.
Yeah.
Right? And so this relay race happens over and over again. And if you think about what's been happening in climate, we owe so much to the scientists, Yoshino, Keeling, who's got us started, right? And then the people that have called out the need, right? We owe so much to this. The policymakers, as I just showed you, stepped up. You know, part of the reason I'm on this stage is the rest of us have to step up.
Yeah.
There's a passing of a baton that needs to happen to people. To answer your question, that's what we're trying to do.
And so, less than a minute, given everything that you've just told us, clearly you've thought about this a little bit. What does this room do? Like, what do you send them off with what's something that they can take home and say to their families, say to their partners, say to their kids about the next step that they need to take, given that you represent the money side of this?
Yeah, I think the money is going to start moving because the opportunity is there. But I think importantly, we need to take a bias to action and a touch of optimism. So one of the things that happens in a relay race is the last leg is sometimes the fastest. And what surprised people historically is when you look at the time, I mean, after 30 years of the atomic revolution, Oppenheimer stepped in and won a war, won 7 Oscars, right? So I think there's an optimism here that we can get this moving. We may not be moving fast enough, but we are moving faster. And the path to progress and perfection starts with progress.
Right.
And I see that. I think that's happening, and the passing of the baton will accelerate it. So let's have some hope.
All right, and let's get to work. Jim Coulter, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.